Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Shane Beamer, the South Carolina Gamecocks, operating, moving a little bit differently than we're used to seeing South Carolina move on the recruiting trail. And what I mean by that is South Carolina's not going after a ton of bodies so far in the 2026 cycle, but the names that they are going after are consistently some of the best players that you see in the country. This was a conversation that we had for South Carolina heading into the summer, and that is, I think it's very clear that Shane Beamer is trying to elevate this South Carolina program and what they're doing on the recruiting trail. They're trying to capitalize on all that momentum that's around this program coming out of the 2024 year. We expect them to be a very good football team in 2025 as well. I think Shane Beamer saying, hey, how can we maintain this level of play in the SEC over the next 5 to 10 years? Well, I think it starts with, hey, capitalizing on the momentum we have on the football field, translating it to what we're doing in terms of talent acquisition. If you want staying power in the SEC, you better be bringing in the Jimmies and Joes. And, we've seen South Carolina take some big swings in previous recruiting classes, but they were kind of isolated. It was a guy like Dylan Stewart and it was a guy like Nick Carver. I think this 2026 cycle, South Carolina consistently taking bigger swings than we are used to seeing this program take on the recruiting trail. And here's my take. Shane Beamer's moving with some confidence because as of right now, there are not a ton of backup plans for South Carolina. I think Shane Beamer and South Carolina feeling pretty dang good about their chances with a lot of these names that we see on the board. Want to run through what to expect over the next couple of weeks? I mean, the South Carolina fans who are listening to this right now, it's about to get real. Like as we finish up the month of June, head into July, a lot of these names are coming off the board. And I think we're going to have a lot of commitments to break down. Where does South Carolina sit in this 2026 cycle? Who are the names that could be trending to South Carolina? That's the conversation I want to get into. And we're going to have some nitty gritty roster building conversations as well. Before we get into it, as always, the South Carolina fans, appreciate you guys. Many of y'all know this by now. These are my favorite conversations to have on the recruiting trail. And don't get me wrong, I love throwing on that South Carolina commitment sweatshirt and breaking down commitments. Love talking about monster official visit weekends, the nitty-gritty roster building conversations. That's really what I enjoy about these months of the college football calendar. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to be really busy. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start at the top. Landon Duckworth. It is pretty clear that it is the decision mode for Landon Duckworth. He took his visits, took his visit to South Carolina, took his visit to Auburn. It's been dark from him over the last couple of days. I ain't no insider, but what the insiders are saying is that South Carolina is in a really good spot for Landon Duckworth. And man, would that make so much sense? Number one, I view Landon Duckworth as a guy that's more than capable of being the heir to the throne of Lenore Sellers and truly being that face of the program quarterback that Lenore Sellers has emerged to be for South Carolina. Look, that's not to discount Aaron Noland. That's not to discount Cutter Woods, but I talk about ceiling. Talk about, hey, who has the opportunity to be one of the biggest difference makers in the sport? I'm probably pointing to Landon Duckworth, and I think that's what South Carolina's selling on Landon Duckworth is, hey, look at what we did with Lenore Sellers. Look at the level. Look at the maximization we've seen from him. That can be you over the next couple of years at South Carolina. And I view Landon Duckworth as like the catalyst. If we see a commitment from him relatively soon to South Carolina, and I think you could see South Carolina get hot on the recruiting trail because he's kind of player that he's going to have a little gravitational pull. Guys are going to see Landon Duckworth going to South Carolina and say, hey, wouldn't mind going and playing with quarterback one Landon Duckworth over the next couple of years. Running back position, weird. Don't necessarily love it if I'm being honest. And I've been very complimentary to Shane Beamer, South Carolina, and the staff. I don't get why we're not being more aggressive at this position. One, I think it's a very attractive destination for running backs. This is going to be a team that wants to run the football over the next couple of years. Rasul Faison going to be gone after this year. Oscar Attaway going to be gone after this year. I feel like we should be bringing in two, and I feel like we should be going after some of the best running backs across the country. It just hasn't really been the strategy that South Carolina has pursued. I don't know if they're planning on being more transfer portal heavy, of which they've had success doing, going back to a guy like Rocket Sanders. We'll see what South Carolina decides to do in that department. Just kind of confused why they're not being as aggressive as they are with some of these other positions. Wide receiver position. You look at three guys that I think are the top targets for South Carolina. Samarian Wingo trending to Florida. Travis Johnson trending to Michigan. Sequel Patterson certainly trending to South Carolina. Here's the thing with this. I just don't think it's a huge priority for South Carolina in the 2026 cycle. I don't even know how much room they have on their roster. I mean, they brought in 6 wide receivers in 2025, all of which they sound to be very high on over the next couple of years. It might just be Sequel Patterson at the wide receiver position in 2026. And although maybe on the surface that seems light, I don't know how many guys they can afford to take because they took so many in the 2025 cycle. And I love Sequel Patterson. I think this kid is dynamite with the football in his hands. Tight end position, Tilden Riley, like him. In-state kid. He might just stick at wide receiver. That's a big body that moves really well. If you can put the adequate weight on him and have him be physical enough to be an inline blocker in the SEC, but maintain the pass-catching juice and athleticism, it's going to take a little bit because there's a long ways to go in terms of getting that body right. But if you do get that body right, of which South Carolina's done a really good job of, I think he can be a really good football player for South Carolina over the next couple of years. Offensive line. I love JB Shabazz. We'll see kind of how that plays out. Y'all know how big of a fan I am of Darius Gray. I think South Carolina wants them both, and I think they're going to push really hard for them both. And again, this is an example of South Carolina having that quiet confidence about themselves where we're going to go after the big dogs, and we're going to go head-to-head against a team like LSU and a team like Ohio State for a guy like Darius Gray. If you land one of them, I think you'd feel pretty dang good about what the bones are of the offensive line class. This is what fires me up the most. What can this line of scrimmage play look like in 2026? What can this defensive line class look like? I think what's front and center right now is PJ Dean. PJ Dean, so he's got a top 3. He's committing June 30th. Ohio State, South Carolina, and Georgia. This is the recruitment that I think accurately displays the pull that South Carolina has. This is a line of scrimmage player that Georgia has prioritized for a very long time. He's a legacy kid. His older brother played for Georgia and Jared Wilson. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't even know if South Carolina is getting in this recruitment. Now with the success South Carolina has had on the football field, developing defensive linemen, playing young talent, all of a sudden South Carolina, look, I don't know if they're the leader. This one sounds like it's going to go back and forth between Georgia and South Carolina over the next couple of days before the commitment. We'll see what happens. Regardless of what happens, I think this shows you where South Carolina is as a program on the recruiting trail. Then Noah Clark, big fan of this kid, big body. And there's just not a ton of big bodies in the 2026 cycle. Aiden Harris, PJ Dean, Noah Clark. That would be one of the better defensive line classes that you see in the 2026 cycle. Can South Carolina go 3 for 3? I would say it certainly fire me up. We'll see how that plays out. Noah Clark committing July 2nd, so we'll kind of get our answer over the next couple of weeks. Edge, you like Andrew Harris a lot. Carter Meadows, that seems like Michigan might be trending for Carter Meadows. Julian Walker, in-state kid. I believe his father is on the strength and conditioning staff at South Carolina. That seems like a South Carolina kid. And so can you land 1 out of 2 between Carter Meadows and Julian Walker? Look, if you go 2 for 2 on PJ Dean and Noah Clark, and then you go 1 out of 2 with Carter Meadows and Julian Walker, feel damn good. And look, I'm not even counting out Carter Meadows because we've seen South Carolina go to the DMV and get it done for 5-star prospects. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, it's a small board, but it's a really talented board. And I think that the reason it's small is I think South Carolina is telling us, hey, we got a lot of optimism in our ability to land some of these kids. I want to talk about the secondary really quick, specifically Samari Matthews. Clemson was the favorite to land him for a while. That seems to have faded in a big time way. Texas was the favorite to land him for a while. Now it seems like it's going to be a heavyweight fight between South Carolina and Texas. And look, once again, showing South Carolina's pull on the recruiting trail right now. I mean, this is a guy that Texas clearly is valuing. And Texas has been really for the last 2 years, like the face of talent acquisition in college football. South Carolina gets him on campus for that last official visit weekend. He moves up his commitment date a full month. And I think South Carolina's got a great chance to land Samari Matthews. Now, why do we think South Carolina has the chance here? I think it starts with this. Look at the development we've seen in the secondary and look at all the young talent that gets on the football field for South Carolina in the secondary. I think that's appealing to Samari Matthews. Hey, I can compete for an SEC championship here. I know I'm going to get developed at a very high level and have the opportunity to play early for South Carolina. That's a lot of pulling. That's a lot of things pulling Samari Matthews to South Carolina. Then Tamarian Watkins, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and again Georgia's been sniffing around. Every kid we've really talked about has been a relatively heavy hitter recruitment for South Carolina, and they're in it for all of these guys. Now, are they going to land every name on this document? No, probably not. I think this really signifies the confidence that Shane Beamer has in the talent acquisition of this South Carolina program. We'll see how it plays out. Um, I'm excited for South Carolina. I'm excited to break down the commitments and look. There might be some new names added to this list, and I might have forgotten some names that I need to add to the list. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.